advertisers and sponsors when you look at the specter of a new television deal that's scheduled to come down the pike and the windfall that could create for WNBA players. Guess what you do under those circumstances? You protect the golden goose. Why do you think Matt Barnes went on?
Let that sink in for a second. What if the most captivating story in the WNBA right now has absolutely nothing to do with record-breaking three-pointers, no-look passes, or sold-out arenas? What if the real narrative, the dark, unspoken truth that is sending shockwaves through the front offices of the league, is an injury that has been desperately swept under the rug? We are talking about a physical toll brutally inflicted during a game that left every single person watching with a sickening, sinking feeling in the pit of their stomach. The recent clash against the New York Liberty was not just another tally in the loss column for the Indiana Fever. It was the exact moment the veil was ripped away. The league's unspoken, gritty, and borderline malicious war against its newest and brightest superstar was laid completely bare for the entire world to witness. And now, thanks to the undisputed heavyweight champion of sports media, Stephen A. Smith, the chilling truth of what is actually happening behind closed doors has been ripped into the spotlight. The fans aren't just concerned. They are worried sick. And frankly, they have every right to be. The silence from the league's top brass has been nothing short of deafening, an absolute masterclass in PR deflection. But the evidence written on the hardwood is entirely impossible to ignore. It all comes back to a single moment, a flash of unbridled, unnecessary aggression that set off a catastrophic chain reaction, one that now genuinely threatens to derail what is supposed to be one of the most legendary careers in the history of professional sports. When the whistle finally blew, it was too late. The real foul, the malicious intent that the broadcast cameras didn't fully capture in that split second, is exactly what the league desperately hopes you will simply forget. But the internet never forgets, and real basketball minds know exactly what they saw. It was a play that entirely transcended simple, hard-nosed defense. It was a message. It was a statement delivered with a forearm and a shoulder. Picture the scene. The atmosphere is absolutely electric. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Caitlin Clark puts the ball on the floor, doing what she does best, driving to the basket against the powerhouse New York Liberty. The crowd is on their feet waiting for the magic, but that roaring energy instantly curdled into a collective, horrifying gasp. Breanna Stewart, a former most valuable player, a certified titan of the league, and someone who knows exactly what she is doing, did not just play tight, suffocating defense. She delivered a jarring, forceful, and punishing hit that sent Clark completely stumbling out of control. Let's be incredibly clear here. This was not the kind of incidental contact you see in the normal, rhythmic flow of a basketball game. This was profoundly different. It was calculated, it was deliberate, and it carried a razor-sharp edge that felt deeply, uncomfortably personal. If you freeze the frame, the look on Caitlin Clark's face wasn't just the typical frustration of a missed call. For a terrifying split second, it was pure, unadulterated agony. She immediately clutched her side, her ankle twisting at a stomach-churning angle as she frantically fought just to maintain her balance and stay on her feet. For a moment, that felt like an eternity. The entire arena and millions of people watching from their living rooms collectively held their breath. Everyone was expecting the absolute worst. Everyone was waiting for the dreaded tear, the pop, the season-ending catastrophe. This wasn't just your standard welcome to the big league's rookie bump. It felt like a targeted strike. It was a physical manifestation of the old guard looking down at the new shining phenom and saying, "You don't own this place yet, and we are going to make you bleed for every single inch." While the game eventually resumed and the clock kept ticking, that haunting image was permanently seared into the minds of everyone who witnessed it. It was the ultimate flashpoint. It was the single, undeniable incident that took the quiet, hushed whispers of a league-wide conspiracy and made them completely impossible to ignore. But here's where the story gets incredibly dark. That single, brutal hit was merely the opening chapter of a much more sinister narrative. The official PR spin, of course, was that she was completely fine. Nothing to see here, folks. Caitlin Clark, being the absolute warrior and relentless competitor that she is, waved off the trainers, shook off the stinging pain, stepped right back up to the free throw line, and continued to hoop. If you only look at the box score the next morning, that is exactly the story you will believe. But the truth in professional sports is rarely found on a stat sheet. It is found in the microscopic details, in the grueling moments between the whistles when the adrenaline starts to wear off. Viewers with a trained eye immediately noticed that something was drastically off. It wasn't glaring, but it was there. A slight, almost imperceptible hesitation in her historically explosive first step. A subtle, fleeting grimace washing over her face as she landed on the hardwood after a signature step-back jump shot. A newly developed stiffness in her lateral movement that absolutely was not present before that catastrophic collision. These are not the signs of a player who is 100% healthy. These are the telltale, screaming red flags of a professional athlete pushing her body to the absolute breaking point, desperately masking a painful injury to avoid showing even a single drop of blood to the predators constantly circling her on the court. Behind the heavily guarded doors of the locker rooms and the whispered conversations of league insiders, the chatter was growing louder by the day. Sources were beginning to leak that while it wasn't a catastrophic, torn Achilles, season-ending type of injury, it was something arguably more insidious. But it was a nagging, deep-seated, agonizing injury. The kind of physical trauma that slowly saps a player's stamina, utterly destroys their explosive burst to the rim, and makes them incredibly vulnerable to a much more devastating, career-altering structural failure. She was playing through the pain, but every single hard cut, every sudden deceleration, and every contested defensive stop was a high-stakes gamble with her future. This unseen, silent aftermath created a genuinely chilling reality for the Indiana Fever. The WNBA's biggest, most lucrative star was compromised. She was navigating the court with a massive, glowing target painted on her back, all while simultaneously nursing an injury that the public was never supposed to know about. And what unfolded over the following weeks would definitively prove that the Liberty incident was not just a one-off display of excessive aggression. It was the opening salvo in a completely all-out, unmitigated war. If you think the foul in New York was an anomaly, you are living in denial. It was simply the most glaringly public example of a deeply disturbing pattern that has been violently emerging since opening night. Once you recognize the pattern, you absolutely cannot unsee it. Rewind the tape to the highly publicized showdown against the Chicago Sky. That is where you will find the now infamous moment when Chennedy Carter delivered a sickeningly cheap shot. It was a blindside, aggressive hip check completely away from the basketball that served zero strategic purpose. It wasn't a basketball play. It was a blatant, unadulterated act of street-level aggression. It was a move specifically engineered to intimidate, to bully, and quite frankly, to injure. And let's not forget the relentless, suffocating physicality from players like Angel Reese. It seems as though in a whatever interaction Reese has with Clark on the court is heavily laced with an extra, undeniable layer of venom and hostility. These are no longer isolated incidents. You cannot pass this off as just tough 90s-style defense. When you string these moments together, they paint a genuinely terrifying HD-quality picture of a league-wide targeting campaign. It is exactly as if an unspoken underground memo was circulated to every single locker room in the league. Be excessively physical with Caitlin Clark. Do not, under any circumstances, let her find her rhythm. Make her physically feel every single screen, make her bleed on every cut, make her pay a physical toll for every drive to the basket. This coordinated, relentless campaign of physical aggression goes so far beyond traditional rookie hazing that it isn't even in the same stratosphere. It feels intensely personal, it feels vindictive, and above all else, it feels incredibly, recklessly dangerous. The league's new golden goose, the singular transcendent player who is almost single-handedly driving an unprecedented surge in mainstream popularity, was quite literally being hunted on the hardwood, game after grueling game. And just as this horrifying, undeniable pattern became too obvious to ignore, one of the most powerful, echoing voices in all of global sports media stepped up to the microphone to drop a monumental bombshell. It was a reality check that the WNBA could no longer sweep under the rug. For weeks, the debate had been raging like wildfire across basketball Twitter, sports talk radio, and podcast circuits. Was Caitlin Clark actually being unfairly targeted? Or was this simply the standard, brutal, welcome to the pros treatment that every rookie has to endure? Then, Stephen A. Smith took the stage. This is a man whose voice, whether you love him or hate him, has the undeniable power to entirely shape the narrative of the global sports world. He went on national television, looked dead into the camera, and ended the debate permanently. He didn't just casually suggest that Clark was being treated a little unfairly. He didn't mince his words. He outright confirmed it, loud and clear. In a fiery, impassioned, completely unhinged monologue, he unequivocally declared that what was happening to Caitlin Clark was a downright shame. He stated that the veteran players targeting her were not just playing physical basketball, they were being actively malicious. Stephen A. Smith pulled back the curtain on the thinly veiled, toxic jealousy radiating from veteran players. He stated verbatim that they seemed to deeply resent the tidal wave of media attention, the massive million-dollar endorsement deals, and the global spotlight that Clark was effortlessly commanding. This confirmation from Stephen A. was a massive turning point in the timeline of this controversy. He wasn't just some anonymous troll on a message board. He is a certified media titan. He has sources deep inside front offices, he talks to the agents, he talks to the players, and he has bulletproof credibility when he makes a claim this severe. He articulated exactly what millions of frustrated fans were screaming at their televisions, that the WNBA was catastrophically failing to protect its most valuable, irreplaceable asset. He didn't just stop at the players. He called out the entire league infrastructure. He called out the commissioner. He called out the blind officials. He effectively accused the entire establishment of allowing a wildly hostile, dangerous environment to fester and grow, a toxic ecosystem where their biggest, brightest star was being deliberately and systematically hunted on the court without consequence. His words were not just hot-take commentary. They were a damning legal indictment of the league's culture. He gave a massive, amplified voice to the growing, sickening fear that this situation had absolutely nothing to do with the game of basketball anymore. It was about a concerted, pride-driven effort to physically and mentally break down a once-in-a-generation talent. And his bombshell statement forced every single person in the sports world to ask a very uncomfortable, haunting question. Why on earth was this being allowed to happen? The answer to that question might actually be even more sinister and infuriating than the blatant fouls themselves. Once Stephen A. Smith put the entire league on blast, the glaring spotlight immediately shifted to the real functional enablers of this dangerous behavior: the referees, the officials, the people literally paid to maintain order and protect the athletes. With every single game that passes, a brand new, infuriating compilation video of missed calls against Clark goes massively viral online. Hard, stinging slaps to the forearm on her signature jump shots are completely ignored by refs standing 2 feet away. Aggressive, hockey-style body checks as she runs off-ball screens go entirely unpunished. It has become so unbelievably blatant, so comically incompetent, that fans and serious basketball analysts have started to float a genuinely chilling conspiracy theory. The referees are intentionally swallowing their whistles. They are purposely looking the other way. Is this a shadowy, backroom directive from the league office to let them play as some twisted, old-school way to toughen the rookie up? Or is it something far more insidious and personal? Is it a subconscious, deeply ingrained bias from veteran officials who are stubbornly loyal to the old guard of players and who perhaps internally resent her overnight superstar status just as much as the veterans do? Whatever the underlying psychological reason may be, the devastating result is exactly the same. By consistently, blatantly failing to call these obvious dangerous fouls, the referees are broadcasting a crystal clear or neon-sanctioned message to every enforcer in the league. You can get away with murder when it comes to Caitlin Clark. The rules do not apply when she has the ball. This complete lack of basic protection creates a rapid, vicious cycle of escalating violence. Players see that the officials refuse to step in, so they push the envelope further. They get even more physical. The fouls get harder. The cheap shots become more frequent. The elbows get sharper. And the terrifying risk of a catastrophic, career-ending injury absolutely skyrockets with every single possession. This is not simply a case of bad officiating or a missed call here and there. It is a complete, systemic, institutional failure from top to bottom. The very people tasked with the sacred duty of ensuring player safety are intentionally turning a blind eye, leaving a 22-year-old rookie completely abandoned to fend for herself against what feels like a coordinated, league-wide physical assault. It is a gross dereliction of duty that puts Caitlin Clark's entire incredibly promising career in immediate jeopardy. And when you take a step back and look at the astronomical amounts of money involved, the league's inaction goes from being merely negligent to completely mind-bogglingly stupid. Let's be brutally, unapologetically honest for a second. Caitlin Clark is, without a shadow of a doubt, the absolute best thing to happen to the WNBA in decades. You could easily argue she is the best thing to happen to the league since its inception. She's a walking, talking human stimulus package for a league that has spent years desperately begging for mainstream cultural relevance. Now, look at the undeniable facts. The WNBA finally has league-wide charter flights. Why? Caitlin Clark. Arenas across the country are completely sold out and with ticket prices rivaling NBA playoff games. Why? Caitlin Clark. They are shattering television ratings records every single time she steps onto the hardwood. Merchandise sales have absolutely exploded into the stratosphere. It is all because of her. She isn't just a highly skilled basketball player. She is the literal, undeniable business model for the league's future financial growth. Therefore, a significant long-term injury to her wouldn't just be a devastating blow to the Indiana Fever's playoff hopes. It would be an absolute unmitigated economic catastrophe for the entire WNBA. The massive wave of momentum they have built would come to a violently screeching halt. The millions of brand new fans she single-handedly brought to the sport would turn off their televisions and disappear overnight. Though the lucrative media attention, the primetime slots, the massive corporate sponsorships, it would all evaporate into thin air. This is exactly what makes the on-court physical aggression so incredibly baffling and infuriating. But if you listen to the locker room whispers, if you peel back the layers of PR speak, it all points to a remarkably powerful and fundamentally destructive human emotion, pure, unadulterated professional jealousy. Rumors have been swirling like a hurricane for months that many veteran players who have grinded in empty gyms for a fraction of the pay, feel that Clark's meteoric, stratospheric rise is completely unearned. Or they feel she hasn't paid her dues. They feel that the obsessive media attention she receives is somehow profoundly disrespectful to the women who literally built the foundation of the league with their blood, sweat, and tears. This deep-seated, bitter resentment creates a highly toxic, radioactive on-court culture. It creates an environment where delivering a hard, punishing foul on Clark isn't seen as a dirty play. It is celebrated as a badge of honor behind closed doors. It is viewed as a necessary way to forcibly put the arrogant rookie in her designated place. It is the most short-sighted, financially suicidal, and self-destructive mindset imaginable. In their petty, ego-driven quest to physically humble one single player, they are literally risking the financial health, the television deals, and the future salaries of the entire league and every single person employed by it. They are, in essence, striking matches and trying to burn down the incredibly lucrative mansion they all live in, simply because they are incredibly bitter about who is getting to sleep in the master suite. This perfect, terrifying storm of coordinated physical targeting, grossly negligent officiating, and deep-rooted internal jealousy is creating a very real, very loud ticking clock on a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent. We have seen this exact tragic story play out on the hardwood before, and it never has a happy ending. Phenoms with transcendent, otherworldly talent like Derrick Rose or Grant Hill in the NBA saw their Hall of Fame trajectories irrevocably altered, their explosive athleticism robbed from them by devastating injuries sustained from relentless, grinding physical abuse on the court. Their incredible bodies simply broke down under the immense, constant, targeted punishment. Every single time Caitlin Clark gets blindsided by a cheap shot, every time she is run through a blatantly illegal moving screen, the clock ticks dangerously closer to midnight. Each heavy fall to the hardwood, each awkward, twisting landing on a compromised ankle, each maliciously uncalled foul is just another spin of the loaded roulette wheel. The human body is fragile. How long can any athlete's joints, ligaments, and bones realistically withstand that kind of nightly, targeted physical assault before something finally, permanently gives out? The fear among the fan base and the smart analysts is no longer if she will get seriously, tragically injured, but when. We are currently watching, in horrifying slow motion, the systematic physical dismantling of a global superstar. The league office is playing an incredibly arrogant, incredibly dangerous game of chicken, seemingly just sitting on their hands, waiting for a catastrophic tendon-snapping injury to actually happen before they finally decide to step in, change the rules, and protect their most important, valuable player. But by then, it will be drastically, tragically too late. The physical damage will be permanently done. The magic will be lost. And the WNBA, the commissioner, the referees, and the bitter veterans will have to stand in front of the cameras and answer to the world. They will have to explain exactly why they allowed their absolute brightest, most lucrative star to be violently extinguished by the very players and the very institution that should have been doing everything in their power to lift her up. It is a heartbreaking sports tragedy waiting to happen, unfolding in plain sight, broadcast in high definition, game after agonizing game. In the end, what we are witnessing is not just a highly touted rookie facing a particularly tough welcome to the professional ranks. That is an insult to our intelligence. It is a complete, top-to-bottom systematic breakdown on multiple fronts. We have a generational magic-weaving talent being physically hunted on the hardwood like prey. We have an undeniable, documented pattern of malicious aggression confirmed by top-tier plugged-in media analysts like Stephen A. Smith. We have highly questionable, borderline corrupt officiating that seems to actively encourage, rather than strictly deter, this wildly dangerous behavior. And beneath it all, festering like a wound, we have a league teetering precariously on a knife's edge, where locker room jealousy and petty resentment threaten to completely sabotage its own unprecedented, explosive financial growth. The Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark are not just drawing up plays to fight their opponents on the scoreboard anymore. They are fighting a grueling, exhausting war against a deeply hostile, toxic culture that seems utterly determined to physically and mentally break its newest, brightest star. The situation has rapidly moved light years beyond a few tough, hard fouls. It has morphed into a massive crisis of identity for the entire WNBA. Will the league finally wake up, step up to the plate, and fiercely protect the very player who holds the literal golden key to its financial future? Or will they cowardly stand by, swallow their whistles, and watch as petty on-court vendettas and massive institutional failure lead directly to the tragic, preventable downfall of a once-in-a-lifetime talent? The whole world is watching with bated breath. The tape doesn't lie, and the clock is ticking down to zero.